Hello, I'm Nadia Frontier. This week on the Iceworld podcast, I'm chatting to Eli and Jeremie, who are aircraft engineers based at the British Antarctic Survey's Rothera research station. We spoke about flying in a Twin Otter all the way down from Canada and what a typical day looks like. Spoiler alert, there isn't one. Eli and Jeremie have just joined me after a day's shift in the Rothera hangar. It is lovely to have you both on the podcast. Let's start by introducing yourselves, and can you talk us through where your journey with the British Antarctic Survey began?
My name's Eli Arseneault. I've been doing aircraft maintenance for around 5-ish years now. My journey with BAS, it sort of starts when you join up with Rocky Mountain Aircraft, like out of school or whenever you're joining up with the company. You always see the BAS Twin Otters in the hangar, and you don't really get to see what they do or where they go, but you always generally develop your interest from there. And then as soon as you're able to get your license and get your ACA, then you're eligible to go down and work on them in Antarctica. And that's sort of where my journey began.
I'm Jeremie, and I pretty much had the exact same story here as Eli, dragging behind by a few years. I recently got licensed a year and a half ago, and Eli about 3, so I'll be here for my first season, and Eli for his 3rd year. And same thing, started at Rocky about 5 years ago, and same process of go through the motions as an apprentice and work your way up until you get your license and then your ACA. ACA is what you need to come down here so you can sign off the work on the aircraft. So it's been a long journey, and here we are.
Now you've made it to Rother. And what does ACA stand for, just for the listeners who might not be familiar with Canadian aircraft mechanics?
Essentially, in the bigger aircraft world, it's your type rating for an aircraft. For us, since we're M1 maintenance, it isn't as governed, I guess, but it's basically meaning you have gone above and beyond learning about the aircraft that you are working on, and you are eligible to now sign maintenance releases for said aircraft.
So you both have that specifically for Twin Otters and the Dash aircraft?
Just Twin Otters for us. We specialize in the Twin Otter, and there's another crew contract under Voyager, and they have an M2 category engineer come down, and they carry out the work on that aircraft.
Wow, so you guys are super niche. So if you wanted to branch out and work on a different type of aircraft, would you then have to go through that accreditation process again?
It's quite case by case depending on what sort of AMO you work at. Our license covers M1. I think in Europe it's a B1 license. So we're basically allowed to sign maintenance releases for aircraft under 12,500 pounds. Anything above that weight, then you get into that M2 category. And I believe in Europe that is B2. It's not as transferable of a skill being M1 side because you're more on the general aviation side. So you're working for flight schools or sort of northern operators, smaller aircraft, where if you're M2, you're working on your Boeings, your Airbuses, your really big aircraft that are doing your mostly commercial travel.
And how did you end up with the opportunity coming to Antarctica? Is it guaranteed that most people that work at Rocky Mountain will get a stint down to one of the research stations?
Not necessarily, I would say. It is based on interest of who wants to do it. We typically send down an engineer per aircraft. So the 4 Twin Otters here, usually there's 1 engineer per aircraft. If you want to do it, typically there's always a spot for you as long as you go through the right process to get your license, get your ACA. And if you're motivated, they'll absolutely send you down. But it's different every year, I would say.
Yeah, it all depends on the people's lifestyles and what they can accommodate for, because dedicating 5 to 6 months, or for the half season, the 2 to 3 months of your time to come down here and work and breathe Twin Otter it's a big ask for some people. So it definitely is a big interest for a lot of our juniors who are coming in. It is an opportunity that not a lot of people get to experience.
So Jeremie, this is your first time at Rothera. How are you finding it? What's it like compared to your initial expectations?
So far, it's been really good. I enjoy the crew. We have a really fun crew. The Rocky guys and girls definitely make it a less of a stress environment, but make it also enjoyable for us while we're down here. So,
and Eli, you've already alluded to this, but what keeps you coming back year on year?
It's sort of the way Jeremie explained it, is you're here with a lot of your coworkers, and a lot of your coworkers are your friends and your buddies, and you sort of eat, sleep, live with these people. Like, I'm even rooming with Jacob, who's one of one of the Rocky Mountain aircraft guys. So I'm with him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, essentially. So you develop really strong bonds with your coworkers or friends, and you just generally have a good time. You get to go on boat trips. You get to go on co-pilot trips. Like just earlier today, I went out on a boat trip and got to do some for science fishing, which was amazing. Who gets to say they went fishing in Antarctica? So it's just a really cool experience. And it's a switch up from what we get back home at Rocky Mountain Aircraft. Back home, we're more of the heavy maintenance style. So for example, when the BAS aircraft go back in the summertime, we complete a full C check on it, which is, again, the aircraft's down for a couple months. You strip it down to its bare bones. You inspect everything. You look everything over. You write stuff up. You fix stuff. Where you come down to Antarctica and you get a whole new experience of keep the airplanes flying as long as possible. You want to avoid downtime. So it's a lot more exciting. You get more troubleshooting. It really improves you as an engineer, I believe, when you get a little bit of exposure to both.
Oh, a great skill set. And you get to do it for half the year. So you can do more reactive maintenance for half the year whilst in Antarctica at Rothera, and then go back to, do you carry on actually? Do you take half the year to go back to Rocky, or do you just take the time off?
We do go back to Rocky. So we're getting to the stage, Jeremie and I, this past summer, actually, we both ran our very first C-check each. So I ran the C-check on VP FBC, and Jeremie did.
I ran the FBB program there. So back home, it kind of helps us get a good idea and a good feel for where the aircraft are in the maintenance spectrum of things. So when we come down here, it's nice that the engineers that ran these projects, like Jacob ran one, I ran one, Eli ran one, and coming down here, each of us know the little individual quirky items about the aircraft. So it definitely helps enhance our ability to maintain these things when each of us kind of know a little more about the little things that were done over the maintenance programs, and makes it way easier for us to have an idea of where things are at.
It's like your child. And just to explain to the listeners, can you explain the different checks? So you've got the A and the B and the C check?
Yeah. So your A check will happen every 125 hours. And then the B check will be the next 125 hours. Then followed by the A check again, B check again. And then the 500 hour mark is your C check. But down here, the aircraft are actually operating above your standard max takeoff weight. And they do this so they can run more fuel in the aircraft as well as more equipment to get all the science gear, all of their field operational equipment, all of that stuff you can't carry on the aircraft if you're operating at the normal weight. So the upgraded weight is 14.5. So that actually knocks off 28 hours off your time till check. So we're actually operating 96 hours between each maintenance check. So the aircraft are actually effectively being maintained at a higher standard than what they normally would be at. That's how the checks work.
And then that means that the aircraft never goes above 500 hours because that is not possible for you to do the more thorough, in-depth C check whilst on station, right?
It is sort of limited on what we can do down here, but we save that for when we get back to Rocky. So yeah, A check covers really light things. It's basically like a 7-day inspection, which you have to do every 7 days. And then you do a couple engine filters on top of that, a couple extra inspections. B check, you start to do a little bit more deeper diving into the aircraft. So same engine filters, you do some wingtip filters. And then we do a interesting thing, which is sort of BAS maintenance program, is the interim C check, essentially is what it's called. And that one's sort of, it's usually if you have about 3 people, that's like a 3 or 4 day check on the aircraft where you're pulling panels off, you're doing all of your engine inspections, engine filters, wingtip filters, airframe filters, motive flow filters, hydraulic filters. So it's just a much more thorough, in-depth operation. And that's typically the heaviest sort of maintenance that we are going to do down here before we send it back home to Calgary.
Does it ever get repetitive if you have this? I've seen the checklists and the hangars. It's very, very structured in what you have to do. What does that feel like?
It is repetitive, but it is very different from what we do back home. So back home, we'll do these heavy checks, which will usually last from 2 to 4 months. And coming down here, doing these checks that are cycled every 96 hours, it's a much more manageable check. So it doesn't really get repetitive for me. It definitely is very repetitive, but the checks that we're used to back home are so high in standards and high in maintenance time that these actually are pretty light to us. It feels like it takes us a day for like an A check, and then B check can be up to 2 days. And then C checks, we haven't, interim Cs, we haven't got to down here yet. But each of these things all yield different results. So it's like, it doesn't get repetitive. It actually is kind of fun because we find our rhythm in these checks and we all kind of have an idea of where we're all at. So we don't even need to really communicate when we do these checks. We just get into a flow. We gotten used to a heavy amount of repetitiveness back at home with all the other heavy maintenance that we do. That down here is a really nice breath of fresh air.
Are you able to then therefore have more time to do other things that are involved with the aircraft, like fueling and cargo? And what's the kind of typical structure of your day or your week?
When aircraft aren't on check, because obviously they get their 96 hours, and then in that in-between time, you're sort of doing the lighter stuff around the hangar. So you're cleaning the hangar, you're organizing the hangar, you're organizing the different parts sea cans. With the new hangar coming, we got to organize things. We got to actually understand what we have down here, what we need down here. And if we are going to downsize the operation with this temporary hangar, we need to have a full understanding of everything that we use, obviously with this new hangar coming. So that's sort of what you do when aircraft are in between checks. Obviously, it does as well give us time to join in on the operations, which I quite enjoy in the morning. You become a rampy, essentially. You get to help fuel the aircraft. You get to help load the aircraft. You get to sort of do a little walk around in the morning on the aircraft, make sure everything's top notch. And I think it does help to just bring a higher standard on the aircraft itself.
And what's this new hangar as well?
The theory is in the next 2-ish years, they're going to be overhauling the hangar and we are going to be running out of a temporary hangar.
What would you say the best aspects are of your jobs in Antarctica?
The best thing for me, I would say, is the big shift in lifestyle and how we're used to things. So being able to be part of the aircraft operation instead of like just maintaining them all the time makes it quite fun. We went up to Skiway a couple times, which is just above the ridge here in Rothera. And out there, you get a little bit of sense of difference from actually just being down on the ground, maintaining the aircraft. You actually get to be on them and be a part of the operation itself versus just fixing them all the time.
One of the things I really like about being down here is back home at Rocky, again, you see these BAS Twin Otters come in when you're an apprentice and you see the maintenance that they go through and you don't really understand why they get maintained to such a high degree. And then you get to come down here and you do your first couple ski landings and you think you absolutely destroyed the airplane because of how rough it feels. And then it really puts it into perspective of why do we do what we do to the level we do it to. In my opinion, I still believe the BAS Twin Otters are the nicest Twin Otters on Earth. Just amazing airframes on them compared to some of the other operators that work on Twin Otters. So it's nice getting that perspective that back home, you can't understand that perspective because you basically see them leave Calgary on a test flight after maintenance. Then you see them leave on their ferry flight. And besides that, you never get to see the fruits of your labor, I guess.
And that must make your work feel a lot more satisfying. Then when you return, you can just, like you say, relate to it a lot more.
It is incredibly satisfying. And that's another thing of being down here is when an airplane comes back and the pilot reports a certain snag and you've never seen a snag before in your life. And now you get to go figure out this snag. It's almost like a game where you get to troubleshoot the snag, figure out the snag, work on it, fix it, confirm that you fixed it. And it's just an amazingly satisfying thing, I find. But I'm also a very competitive person. So
So it's who finds the snag first. And do you have generally a very good working relationship with the pilots? Is that something quite different to what you have in Calgary, that kind of direct engagement? I guess having dinner with them, they're probably telling you the issues of the aircraft at dinner, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes you like it. Sometimes you don't. I'm sure we bug them a little bit too much sometimes, and they don't want to think about work, and we're asking them all about aircraft. But it is a really good relationship that we do share with the pilots. And it's one of those things that you do want to keep strong. You want to be able to communicate with them, and you want to work with them, and you want to learn from them. You want to sort of teach them certain ins and outs of the aircraft. They teach you certain ins and outs of the aircraft, more from the operating side of things. So it is a really healthy relationship. And it's one of those relationships that we do really like to keep strong and tighten it.
With all operations on the ground there, it's actually a really nice environment to be part of, because everyone is tight-knit. It's a really good sense of a community in the hangar.
So let's go back to these ice and snow runways. That is totally different to a tarmac runway. Can you tell us a little bit about what that feels like landing in such a different environment when you're on a co-pilot flight?
Yeah, I guess my first ski landing was this year, a couple months ago. Landing on skis is definitely more rough than what your typical landing would be on wheels. Is landing on wheels, obviously, you just butter it in, but the ski landing on the aircraft is interesting because, like, the initial landing pass, the pilots will actually glide the trailing edges of the skis on the ground to gauge the level of the surface and the condition of the surface before they actually put the aircraft down. This kind of helps mitigate damage or hurting the plane really badly. And landing on the skiway, it's definitely better than other places deeper in the field. Eli's definitely had some more interesting landings for sure, but not super butter as you'd think. It's you could see everything shaking. You feel the aircraft shaking. Everything's vibrating. Look out the window and you could see the cables banging around everywhere. And it makes you kind of understand why we do the maintenance we do and do all the checks we do so frequently, because these aircraft are definitely not put through little. They put in the work down here.
Eli, what are your more rougher experiences of landing on snow or ice or sastrugi?
Yeah, so in my first season, I got a really cool trip. So that was the runway resurface season. So I spent basically a month out in the field, and we ended up going to some sort of further south sites, I guess. Like we went to Eagle, we've gone to the Pensacola Mountain Range, we've been to Union Glacier. And yeah, there's some sites where it is incredible. Like the pilot does their absolute best to do a really nice soft landing, but if you have hard sastrugi, one way or another, you are feeling it. Twin Otter is the pickup truck of the sky. So it feels like you are off-roading it at some of these sites where you have hard sastrugi. It is incredible. And yeah, your first thoughts, as soon as you touch down, you feel all that rah, 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 the clanking, the smashing, the banging. You hear your nose oleo strut hitting all of its stops. And it's quite the feeling. And obviously we're more trained in the aircraft than your average sort of person. So I can only imagine some of the people that it's their first time being, or one of their first 5 times going on an aircraft flight, and they're in Antarctica and they're landing on skis and just feeling some of the forces that the aircraft go through. It's incredible. It is incredible. Slightly frightening some days, but you trust in the machine, you trust in the pilot, and everything's always okay.
Yeah, it's definitely not a smooth landing. And this sastrugi can form in different orientations depending on the wind direction. So the pilots need to have that ability in order to be able to read essentially the way that the wind has like compacted snow, which is what sastrugi is. And sometimes it can be icy. Sometimes it can be like just rock solid, so solid that you won't even be able to dig a tent pole into the sastrugi. And generally the pilots are going to new sites or sites that haven't been visited for multiple years, and there's no one there on the ground, right, to give any weather observations or kind of an assessment of the conditions. So it is a bit like a blind landing.
The British Antarctic pilots down here are probably some of the best pilots on Earth, with how hard they work, the sites they land in, the stuff they do. It's incredible. It really is incredible. And like you said, a lot of the time it can be these blind landings, and you got to find your spot and you got to feel it out, and you got to make that really big judgment call of, do I put this aircraft on the ground, or do I mulligan this site and say, nope, not going to land here? I think being a pilot down here would be really cool. I wouldn't personally want to do it, but I think they should be very proud in the work that they do. I think they're incredible.
Have either of you been stuck out in the field yet because the weather conditions have changed and you've been with a plane and you've had to camp out or something similar?
Myself, no. I actually have had no field time at all. The most action I got this season so far is just a little bit of a fuel farm defit on the skiway that they're retiring. They had about 30 barrels up there. That was a full day of work of loading up the aircraft and then bring it back to Rothera.
I wouldn't necessarily say I've been stuck out in the field, like waiting for weathers per se, but one of the times I would say we were sort of stuck out in the field and we were waiting for answers was when we went to Eagle in my first season there. We ended up doing a fuel cache uplift at Eagle. So that was an extremely cool experience. It's one of those experiences that when it was happening, it really wasn't fun because -20 fuel on your hands does not feel good. But now that it's done and passed, it was a really cool experience that I got to have.
This Eagle place that you talk about, just so we can explain what that means, that's essentially a depot. And a depot is a place where either fuel or scientific equipment or an area is marked on a map and is used to potentially support science projects and permit aircraft to go further south. Are there any other problems that are unique to aircraft and flying operations created by the cold?
I wouldn't say there's really too many. Like the Twin Otter was sort of designed for northern Canada, where you're regularly facing your -15 to your -40. I guess the biggest limiting factor is that anything below -40 is where you have to really start questioning, should I be firing this aircraft up? Is everything going to be okay?
And even in those circumstances, if the aircraft, well, it likely won't be subject to the -40s, each engine is equipped with something called a Tannis heater. They're little heat pads that are affixed to the engine casing, is where the oil pools up and keeps the oil warm.
Let's talk about the ferry flight from Canada. Jeremie, you did that, right? On your way down as your first entrance into Antarctica. What was that like?
The ferry has been probably one of the funnest parts of the journey, just because I haven't seen much airtime while being down here. But the ferry, it consists of, what is it, something like 10 to 11 days of travel. So it's around 55 hours of flying to go all the way from Calgary down here. And on the ferry, you see everything, since you travel through the South Americas all the way down to Rother here. And there's a lot of places that we go through that we got to try different foods, different environments there. And
I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, doing the ferry for me was my first time really traveling. Like, I haven't really left Canada besides doing the travel for BAS here. You definitely get a bit of a temperature shock too, I would say, especially on our ferry north, which Jeremie hasn't experienced yet. But obviously it's getting colder here in Antarctica. Then you get to Punta Arenas. Obviously it's usually miserable and windy and wet. And then as you sort of get to the equator there, you get temperature shocked back to plus 30 to 35 degrees. And then as you get back into the northern hemisphere, closer to Calgary, you're back into that -10, -20. So it's quite the experience.
Have either of you got the ferry flight on your way back north?
We both do, actually, yeah. We will be traveling back up north end of February here.
Has coming to Antarctica and seeing glaciers and understanding a bit more about climate science changed your perspective on topics about what is happening to the environment and global change?
I've seen like photos from our other engineers who have come here in the past, and all of the change in environment and like the recessions of the glaciers just behind the hangar. It's a big shift from how it was 10 years ago versus now. It's receded a ton, and seeing it fall apart each day is quite the interesting sight. last year, I've been told all the glaciers around and flying over, they weren't heavily crevassed yet. And this year, everyone's seen such a big decline in the glaciers and all the crevassing in the area. It's all melting at a rapid rate.
I would say it's quite interesting to see the change. Like, obviously, this is my third season now, and this season is so far different from my first season. Around this time in the past 2 seasons, you'd still have a bunch of snow, a bunch of ice behind the hangar. And even when we came in to Rothera this year, I was telling Jeremie, it's like, oh, we're probably going to be spending maybe 2 days digging out the hangar, just making sure that all of our windows are clear in case you have to escape. And we got down this year, and it was myself and Kevin, and we spent almost just a half day digging things out.
What advice would you give to someone who might be looking to do your job if they're maybe listening to this podcast and thinking about having a bit of a change in their lifestyle?
I would say do it. If it's something that interests you, there's nothing wrong. Like, doing our program it's a 2-year program to get yourself into the industry, into aviation. And you do have to love what you do, I would say, if you're getting into aviation. There's a lot of people that aren't really into airplanes. They're more into mechanical things, and they try out aviation, and it's just not for them. But I think it's one of the most rewarding careers out there. Like, I can't think of a better career for myself than aviation maintenance. The demand is really high for it, and give it a shot. Why not?
Yeah, even if it isn't aviation, BAS has a ton of opportunity for many people to come down here. And the nice thing with BAS is everyone on base actually has an opportunity to travel with the aircraft. We have the co-pilot program, I guess you could say. Everyone gets specific training to be a quote-unquote co-pilot, which doesn't actually entail flying the aircraft. It's just you're the second to the actual pilot. You can get an insight into what it's like in the field too.
What does Antarctica mean to you?
I think Antarctica's helped me. I think it's made me more socially aware. It's given me more purpose to my career. It's helped me become a better engineer, better at what I do. And it's given me more of an understanding of the world out there.
Working down here in Antarctica, it's in my own way, like as an aircraft maintenance engineer, it has allowed me to give back to the world. So being a part of the science and bettering our knowledge on what's happening to the earth, what's happening with the climate, all the ocean science that's carried out. It's part of a big picture.
And penguins are the cutest creature on earth, I would say. So
100%. Yeah. Can't go wrong with the penguins.
That is such a beautiful ending segment. I actually feel quite emotional after that. Thanks both so much for your insight and for doing this live from Rothera after you have both just finished a day of actually working on the aircrafts. So thanks for continuing to talk about your work after your shift.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on.
Thanks for having us.
So, if you're thinking about a career in extreme aviation and want to engage with polar science, you've got some good options. And if you're looking for that big change in scenery and completely new role, visit bas.ac.uk/jobs/vacancies, where recent job openings have just been posted. And in the next episode, we'll be speaking to 2 scientists, Zelna and Charlotte, who have recently returned from the Rewind ice core drilling project on the Antarctic continent. If you enjoy Iceworld, make sure you let us know. You can leave a review on the Iceworld page or wherever you get your podcasts. And please do like and share. It helps us to reach new listeners. I'm Nadia Frontier, and thank you for listening.